How are you? Are you guys good this Friday morning? All right. I'm super excited. Is this mandatory? Is this like something you have to do? Yeah. It is. Okay. All right. All right. Got it. I love the intro. Fumi, it was so nice that you remembered that story. I had chills when you told the story because I remember when you showed up. And Lee, that was amazing. I feel like I should just sit down. But anyway, I'm really excited to talk to you guys about some stuff. And this is actually the fourth time I've done Friday Forum over the years. And I've learned a few things, and a lot of people have told me things. Things like, don't just do your credentials, don't just brag and show your work, don't make too much of a canned presentation, things like that. And so what I thought I would do today is just kind of give you a snapshot of what's in my brain. I do talks around different places at conferences, so I'm going to do a little bit of what you might see when you're out in the world in a conference or something like that. So I'm going to do a little bit of that. I'll do a little bit of about Sylvain Labs and some of the work we do. I'll also talk about our side hustles and that sort of thing. So keep me honest, call me out, raise a hand if you have a question. This isn't meant to be so one way. Anyway, this is Sylvain Labs. That's our logo. We're a strategy and design consultancy, and which we spend a lot of time on this slide. How do we describe ourselves? And we are what you might call an innovation consultancy. Most of what we do is in the innovation space, helping companies think about the future of their products, how they evolve, think about pipelines, think about new product ideas. We also do a lot of brand strategy work. Thinking about what is the brand, who is it for, where does it fit in the world. We're a certified B Corporation. Do you guys know what that is? No? Damn. Certified, we work hard to get that certification. Certified B Corporation is a certification that's granted to companies that place social impacts and sustainability at the core of their mission. And so Patagonia is the most famous certified B Corporation. There are others like Ben & Jerry's and Etsy. But in this kind of agency consulting game, there are very, very few that have this B certification. In fact, I researched it, and of all the consultancies and agencies in the world, there's only about 3 that have this certification. And the other 2 are kind of focused more on the public sector and nonprofit sector. We're one of the few that has this and does the work that we do, which means we have all sorts of policies in place to treat employees well. We donate money to profits. We donate profits to causes. We do pro bono work. We volunteer. We do our best to be good corporate citizens. And we take that shit super seriously without being too righteous about it, if I'm right. The company was started 10 years ago. Ben joined me in doing that. He's a Brand Center grad with someone else. Ben, anything you want to say? Or? Ben and Joey started with me. And I'll talk a little bit more about some stuff. So, and really quick, just to give you a sense of some of the work we do so you know a little bit more about us. Everyone works with Google, right? But we don't do any advertising, period, just so you know. Like we don't work on campaigns or messaging. We work on product development and strategy. In the case of Google, right now, this second, we're working on Pixel. So we're thinking of what is the new value proposition for Pixel? How should Pixel compete with the iPhone or Samsung, and really deliver a new benefit. It's Google, it's the might of Google. They're in every part of your life, but somehow they can't penetrate the telecom relationship. So that's a really interesting project. Working with Spotify, literally, Ben's actually kicking off this project right now. And it's not confidential, they're launching a new high fidelity product, meaning decompressed music or uncompressed music that basically sounds like what the artist intended. So really, really full sound. Right now, the music you listen to on Spotify is highly compressed and streaming, so you don't really get the full range of the sound. And so they came to us to ask us to do research and strategy to help better define what that new innovation can be. It has interesting challenges, and I'm pumped about it. I'm an amateur audiophile, and I love this project. It's super cool. We're recently working with Chanel, which is also an amazing brand, obviously storied, incredibly profound legacy. We're helping them. They came to us asking to create more of a culture of innovation at Chanel. So Obviously they have a lot of provenance, but how does Chanel stay relevant and modern when they're known for like Coco Chanel and what they did in the 40s and 50s? How do they stay relevant? What does technology mean to Chanel? Those are the questions we're thinking about. We helped launch a new hotel last year with Hilton. They wanted to enter a new space in the hospitality industry. We did research and strategy and helped create, along with the Zeus Jones, which I'm sure a lot of you know. Zeus Jones did the logo. We did the strategy behind that and launched this this year. Actually, just a few weeks ago we launched it. We do a lot of work with Waze, helping them think about what that proposition is. This is, I think, one of the best products that exists in the world. BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world. They manage $6 trillion in assets. It's a lot of money. And we help them think about what their purpose is and the meaning of purpose. Everyone's talking about purpose these days. Personal purpose, corporate purpose. We help them kind of deconstruct that. We do a lot of work with General Motors. We have like a 3-year retainer with them where we help them develop new product ideas. Product ideas related to the driverless car, to the connected car. We do that with a lot of research. And this is an example of a research video we did where we traveled the country, went in people's homes. And I think Ben did this himself. And we talked to people about their needs in the car and beyond the car. We also, I'm sorry for bragging so much, but I want to give you a sense of what we do. This is not meant to be braggy, but we helped develop this jacket with Google, a partnership with Levi's called Jacquard. It's a wearable that lets you interact with your technology in an interesting way. And then we worked with Airbnb to help launch their luxury product last year. How does Airbnb do luxury? Like people that want to spend $10,000 a night, are they going to go to Airbnb? Interesting question, right? So that was a fun project. We've hired, between interns and full-time employees, we've hired probably 12 Brand Center, or maybe more than that, 15 or so Brand Center students over the years. I was on the board for 9 years. Before y'all kicked me off the board, like what the fuck is that? No, no, I'm just kidding. I was super involved in when Van showed up, and I took a quick walk through the school. I'm super energized by what you guys are doing there. You're very lucky to have the people that you have there. Anyway, I never went to Brand Center. I'm from Queens, New York. And who's from Queens? What? Okay, all right. Yeah, I knew that. We discussed. I remember a long time ago we discussed. And so I didn't really know Richmond. Even now, when I got off the plane yesterday, I'm still, every time I'm here, I'm a bit fish out of water. But I found this school, and I had a relationship with the school, and saw that the talent was incredible. Very insightful, creative people that can balance, business and creativity in a great way. And it just, somehow, I had a really kindred spirit with the people that went to school here. And so we hired a bunch over the years. And really what I want to talk to you about is bananas. No, really, it's important. This is something that we take for granted every day. This fruit we see every day in volumes in tons of different ways. Bananas are around us always. You see bananas, you see this yellow fruit, and it's just, you don't even acknowledge it in your brain because it's such a staple, it's ubiquitous. The banana that you know of today, this thing, is everywhere. We see it, we put it in our food, we put it in our drinks. It's everywhere, we don't think about it, it's in our content. And it's funny, and we laugh, and we kind of roll with it. And it's if I put a banana peel on the ground right now, everyone would laugh. And bananas are kind of this frivolous thing that's kind of superficial when it comes to our memory. Yeah, I don't know if you know about this. This is a piece of art called The Comedian that sold for $120,000 at Art Basel. Bananas are kind of this absurd, ubiquitous part of our life. And the thing I would ask you is, what do all these bananas that I've shown you and that you remember, what do they all have in common? And the thing that they have in common is that they're all the same. They're all shaped the same, they're the same color, they're kind of the same thing. But did you know that there are over 1,000 varieties of bananas? Like over 1,000. There are all sorts of bananas. There's the blue Java ice cream banana that's blue and kind of small and very creamy and sweet. There's the ladyfinger banana that's kind of skinny, as you might expect. There's the manzano banana that's kind of red and sweet and a little crispy like an apple. There are tons and tons of bananas everywhere, but somehow We only have a relationship with the Cavendish banana. That's the only banana we know. You never even thought about other bananas probably. 95% of all the bananas consumed in the United States is this jam, is this one right here, the Cavendish banana. Now, why is that? It's because of the industrialization of banana, if I can say that. It's literally tons of resources have been poured into producing this one variety of this one fruit over and over and over again. It's been scaled in this mass way because it's super affordable and efficient and profitable to invest in that one banana. It's much easier to create 1 billion Cavendish bananas than it is to create, 10,000 different bananas. And that's the reason, since the 70s, that we've seen the Cavendish banana everywhere. It's everywhere because of profits and because of business. It's what you might call a monoculture. Now here's the thing. When you do that, there comes incredible risk. Because if there's a sort of a disease or a virus that impacts that one strain of banana, it can spoil the entire species, so to speak. And we're in the middle of that right now. We're in the middle of a potential banana crisis. There's this thing called tropical race 4. It's a disease of bananas that's beginning to kill the banana crop. You didn't know this, right? The Cavendish banana is at risk. And that's a big deal for civilizations that rely heavily on the Cavendish banana to survive. There are places in the developing world that without this fruit, it would actually have a serious impact to food security for generations. And just last week, they found that strain, the tropical race 4 strain, in Australia. So it's spreading like crazy, like coronavirus is freaking people out. Like this tropical race 4 is freaking out people that care about this fruit. And some people are calling it a banana apocalypse. And it's like people are freaking out about what's going to happen to the bananas. Okay, there's like this hysteria around bananas, and because it is this idea of a monoculture. And if you know about the great Irish famine, where there was an incredible dependency on this one type of potato, and it ended up killing 12% of the entire population, you'll know this is a big deal. A monoculture is very, very dangerous. When you invest in one thing, and creating consistency and scale in one thing over and over and over again, it comes great risk. And I tell you that story because I think corporate America has created a monoculture in their circles. They've taken some of those same practices in mass production and in agriculture and brought it to corporate America. I've seen it among my clients. I've seen it in other agencies where really what they're trying to do is create a standard and consistent way of working. And I'll prove it to you. The most successful companies have standard processes. And what we've seen over the years is a new dependency on processes and order. Over the past 15 years, the amount of procedures, vertical layers, interface structures, coordination, bodies, and decision approvals needed has increased by anywhere from 50% to 350%. Companies are creating processes. They're not asking you to come in and be creative. They're like, come in and execute this process that we know works over and over again. And that's creating a uniformity over time. And again, that's a type of monoculture because you're making sure everyone's sort of a robot. Or, uniform teams. There's a euphemism out there called cultural fit. Is this person fit culturally? And what you're really talking about there is, does this person act, look like me? Do they come from a similar place that I do? And so culture fit is kind of a buzzword, but with that, what we're finding are people are hiring very, very similar talent. And I'm not only talking about race. Race is obviously an important part of this conversation, but it's also about school. It's about going to school in general, like private education in general. It's about speaking English. It's about growing up in the city or not in the city, in this country or not in this country. We have a natural affinity to people that look like us or have similar experiences, and that only fuels the monoculture. And then there's behavioral programming. There are many companies you start and they'll put you in an indoctrination, like an orientation, quote unquote orientation, which is really like just act like the rest of us. It's like a behavioral modification. And Facebook's famous for this. They have these very kind of rigid ways to get indoctrinated in the Facebook way of life. And if you look at those three things, so what is that? Standard processes, uniform teams, behavioral programming, that to me really feels like you're cultivating something very specific. It feels like you're cultivating something like a monoculture, and you might even call it a cult. There's a reason the word cult is what it is. And behavioral programming, that's a cult. Standard processes, that's a cult. Uniform identities, that's a cult. Could it be that corporate America, in their fervent pursuit of monocultures, are actually nurturing an unhealthy sort of cult-like behavior? I think so. I think so. What would the opposite be? But let me prove it to you. There's this great episode of Candid Camera, which, if you're born prior to 1990, you know what I'm talking about. It was like a gotcha hidden camera show, and there's a dude in the elevator who doesn't realize he's being filmed, and everyone else in the elevator is facing the back of the wall, and the dude is like, he's in and he's like, should I be, what? And he kind of turns around and he kind of looks at the back, and it's hilarious to me because it shows that we are really victim to that social dynamic, and we are sort of subconsciously craving a monoculture. We want to fit in, and we're making stupid decisions sometimes in that pursuit. And here are some great examples of stupid decisions in that pursuit. In the 80s and 90s, if you wanted to be kind of a badass rocker, Uncle Jesse type, you had the mullet, if you were a white dude, right? And of course, I have to put this in because it's important. It's important. It's the Jerry curl, and I grew up again in Queens, and I was alive in the 80s, and before the 80s. The Jerry curl was, man, if you wanted to be a cool down, like if you wanted to be sexy, you rocked a Jerry curl. And the Jerry curl was cool. I mean, the Jerry curl was cool. Ice Cube rocking the Jerry curl was amazing, And this, again, it was a cue. It was a cue of just falling into sort of an archetype that you wanted to stand for. And that, again, is kind of a monolithic way of being. And this goes on. I mean, I can bring it to 2020 if you want me to. Instagram face is a thing, right? It's like, these personalities that are trying to emulate the Kardashians or the look of a certain, cosmetic look. That is very much part of a sort of uniformity or monoculture that's perpetuating itself online. Or if you want to be a serious SoundCloud rapper, you need tats on your face, you need multicolored dreads, and it's a thing. Like you just buy into it and like, oh yeah, I'm down, I'm it, I'm like part of it, I'm with it, and it's again kind of this thing, and oh yeah, oh I went there, oh yeah, I went there, yes I did, I went there. Ice cold, right? Ice cold. That's right. That's right. That's right. What? Yeah. Is anybody in this room on this page? Yeah. Okay. All right. My question to you: monoculture? To peer pressure? To what? And I say this in jest, right? Obviously, the school, especially within the last year or two, has done incredible work to diversify itself. And I'm saying this playfully. But it's important to keep in mind, is there space? Is there space for us to truly flex as the full humans that we are? Truly. And again, I'm not talking about the sort of diversity that we talk a lot about when it comes to race or gender or sexuality. The full identity of who we are. Is there space? And how do we celebrate that space? Is the point to demonstrate what unites us, or is the point to demonstrate what makes us unique? And that's a little bit of how I view what a polyculture might be. And a polyculture is a healthy agricultural environment where there's diversity, there's less dependence on a singular way of thinking or breeding something. And I don't need to tell you that sort of approach is actually really smart business. And again, I'm not only talking about racial diversity or gender diversity, I'm talking about truly authentic, committed, unapologetic space for difference. And the simple business argument, right? Diversity can improve the bottom line of companies and lead to unfettered discoveries and breakthrough innovations. This is not just wishful thinking, it's the conclusion drawn from decades of research. We know diversity is good for business, but it's also very, very hard. Here's another quote. People feel more effective in homogenous teams, and people feel more confident in homogenous teams. To make diverse teams work, people have to work harder. Having to work really hard activates the brain threat response. This is not easy. It takes work. It takes generations to have a tolerance for real diversity. And again, I'm not only talking about race. There's a trap in this conversation where people only talk about race, which is something I think about all the time. But there are many other dimensions to this that we have to keep top of mind. And that's why I like to talk about Sylvain Labs in this context. We too have the risk of falling into monocultures. We've made mistakes, but we value this kind of ruthless pursuit of diversity in our hiring. We look for people that are very different. We've hired people. We hired a full-time chef who had never worked in an office before. Sarah started out as my assistant 7 years ago. She was a circus performer. That's her right here. And now she's a principal at the company and director of operations across all of our offices. We've hired all sorts of people. We have parents. We have, my dad actually works here, which that's my dad. There are either brand center people all over this. We have people from all over the world. We speak something like 17 different languages. We look for difference in experience. We like side hustles. We like people who can kind of talk about what makes them unique. And it's a challenge. If you're from the United States and you're from the mainstream, if you're like a straight white dude, sometimes you're like, where do I fit in a place like this? But again, diversity is much more complex to that. And there is a sort of otherness within everybody that we need to activate. And that's kind of what my key point is today. But as long as I'm talking about Sylvain Labs, because you insisted that I do, I'll show you some quick examples of how we assert this, right? One thing is where we show up. So I'm from New York, and we're headquartered downtown New York. You're welcome to come by. We're doing an internship this summer, by the way. I'll talk about that later. We have an office. Our second office was in Richmond, where Ben wanted to move back to, and we have about 5 people. How many people do we have in Richmond? 5. And then we have Amsterdam. So why these offices? For one thing, it's because Ben and Murph wanted to move down here, Richmond. But another reason was the fact that our office is in Soho, very cool, hip part of Soho. I live in Brooklyn. We don't really understand the United States the way we should. There's a real arrogance and, again, homogeneity in that bubble of liberal New York City. And what we gain in Richmond, having a presence in Richmond, is have a greater intimacy with what's important to the rest of the world. And the work we can do with Richmond is incredible. Many times we'll have clients who are like, but you don't necessarily speak to our audience. We want to sell in Walmart. Like, there isn't a Walmart in New York City. Like, how do you understand it? And we can very quickly demonstrate a real understanding of that audience by having this presence. And we do research down here really often. It's funny, if you look at some of our research programs, you'll see we'll do New York and Richmond, because you kind of capture a nice balance of the world. So why Amsterdam? Amsterdam is an incredibly diverse, design-driven city, English-speaking. We were doing more and more work across Europe, and we decided to open an office there a few years ago. We have, how many people do we have there? 5 or 6? Katie lived there in Amsterdam and then moved to Richmond. And we let anyone that work at the company work at any one of these offices if it fits client work and budgets and that sort of thing. If you look at our client list, we work in a lot of different, diverse. We try to execute this idea of diversity even in the company we keep. So we work across a lot of industries. We work in luxury, work with technology, work in automotive, we work in finance, and work in sports. And it's important for us to stay stimulated in that way. I don't think we have a singular industry or a singular company that occupies more than 12% of our revenue. Also in our own pursuits, it's a line of headphones that we're partners in that we helped create about 7 years ago called Master and Dynamic. It's a line of high-end headphones. We're in the Apple Store, which is amazing, and it's doing really well. We created a line of hot sauce. I told you there was a chef that worked with us many years ago. We created a line of hot sauce called Same Same But Different. This was a little thing we created to promote it. This was a few years ago, and it failed horribly. But we learned so much. Now when we talk to food clients, we can be like, we truly understand what it's like to launch a food product. Like, we know what the viscosity of the liquid needs to be to get out of the spot. We have a podcast that Joey created, and Aaron and Jess, called Critical Nonsense. I love that title. I think they killed it. When they had the idea for it, I was like, no one needs another podcast. And it turns out to be one of the best things we ever did. And you should all check it out. I'm so proud of the team that did it, and they did it completely on their own. It's incredible. We also celebrate people's side hustles. So Gretchen, who worked with furniture on the side, and I think she's like 26-year-old. She would work with, furniture on the side. She was making shelves and coffee tables. And when we moved to our new space, which is huge, we couldn't really afford a nice conference room table. And I asked Gretchen, I was like, Gretchen, do you think you can make us a conference room table? And her eyes got big, and she had never made anything like that. And she literally built us this conference room table in the office over the weekend. And it was not one weekend, several weekends. Actually, I think we might be live streaming in the office right now. Like, Gretchen, you took a long ass time to get this shit done. She was like, I can do it in 10 days. Yeah, totally. And it was like a month and a half later. No, but it was all good. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for it. But how many places would tolerate someone's side hustle in this way? And even one day she's going to leave, which will be sad, but this will still be here. We will celebrate Gretchen's side hustle forever, and we have versions of this throughout the company. There was Anka, who created a line of these ceramic earrings when she donated profits to Georgia, the country where she's from. Like, we helped her do that. We do other stuff. We've written books. This book called The Dots, which was about influence. We made a documentary called Some Kind of Quest, which was about an eccentric train museum dude. We made a music video. There was a guy that worked at Sylvain Labs, Daniel, who was a far better musician than he was like an assistant, which was what his job. And it was like, he was on The Voice, the show The Voice. He was a candidate on The Voice. He was on Pharrell's team on The Voice. And he had this side hustle interest in music, and we helped him make it. We helped him produce this. It was like friends of mine in Paris, and we put this together. I forgot how much I like this song, but it was super cool. It was super cool. My family's from Haiti, and we did a pro bono project for this nonprofit called Anseye pour Haiti that was about an education nonprofit. I'm super proud of that. This was like the only project I ever showed my mom, and she was so moved by it. And we also, I'm almost done, and we also have a lot of fun. So we take a trip every year. We went to Puerto Rico last year. The year before that, we went to Mexico City, which is what I think this is. The year before that, we went to Barcelona. We went to New Orleans. The whole company goes. We take this trip. We bond hard, and we spend a lot of money, and it sucks. That part sucks. All right, so I made the case for diversity. I made the case for otherness. I showed you how we execute this at Sylvain Labs, and I think it's time for me to show you how we apply this mindset to the work, and how the work can actually be better when you apply this mindset. And here's an example, one of the few things we can talk about, because there's not a lot we can talk about. When you do innovation, there's not a lot that you can show or promote, because it is so kind of secret. But we do a lot of work with the NBA. We've gotten to know the NBA pretty well. And there was this RFP a while ago that was based on this moment where no one really cared about the WNBA. No one paid any attention to the WNBA. The NBA, of course, was a $7 billion juggernaut. The individual teams were worth billions of dollars, just the teams, singular teams. And the WNBA was making like very little money. It was like over $100 million or something relative to $7 billion. It was just such a chasm. The NBA players were getting paid tons of money, and the women were getting paid nothing. And they had to play over the off season in other countries. They had to take jobs. It was just a crime. And the worst part about it was like the mass world didn't appreciate these players. And if you look online and you look at the comments at how some of these women were treated, these players, it was disgusting. It was disgusting. It was like these horrible jokes that I don't even want to repeat. And it was, the league saw this, and they decided they needed to change the business. They were losing money every year. They were losing like millions of dollars every year. They didn't have a business argument to keep the WNBA alive, but they knew it was important. And so they did this RFP. They looked for consultants that can come offer up new innovation models, new ways that the WNBA can make money. They were looking for operating models, meaning how do they actually construct themselves, financial planning. It was like a pretty hardcore management consulting project. They talked to these companies, which you might know, these management consultancies, and somehow we managed to get ourselves in the mix. There were 7 other companies. We managed to be the 8th one, very different than these companies, and we ended up getting the project. And the reason we got the project was we presented ourselves in the way that I just talked. We showed some integrity about understanding what this league really stood for. This is the actual proposal. We created a website that showed how much we cared about this challenge. The mission of the WNBA, the mission is to inspire and empower women. That's the mission of the WNBA. The mission of NASCAR is something like to indulge in the wonder of driving or something like that. And baseball, it's about the American tradition. But the WNBA had nothing to do with basketball. It was actually inspiring and empowering women. And that energized a lot of people at my company. And we decided that's actually the greatest asset. And that's where the future of that brand can go. That's what we put in the proposal. That's how we got the project. And let me show you what we did with it. First, we made sure to staff the team with a really diverse group that spoke to what the WNBA actually is constituted of and where it can go. We also took a look around and we saw, and this is 2018, I guess, right? We looked around and we saw there was a moment, that there was a reckoning in the greater world where people were really holding power accountable, whether it's the Me Too movement, Love Wins, Black Lives Matter. There was a moment, and we felt like inherently the WNBA sort of should have a role here in this moment. And then we got to know the players, and I got to know a couple of these players, and these players are incredible athletes. They're the elite at a whole other level. And many people think women's basketball is better than men's basketball when it comes to technical basketball, whether it's about court vision and passing, teamwork. Sue Bird, some of these players are incredible. They're dunking on it's unbelievable. And more than that, they were also taking a knee long before Colin Kaepernick did. They were political advocates long ago. They were talking about police brutality. They were talking about all sorts of things before it became sort of the phenomenon that it was. The WNBA is also the only league in the world where 100% of the players have some sort of college education. You need a college degree, whether it's a certificate or a bachelor's, to play in the league. So these players are not only the elite athletes, not only are they politically engaged, but they're also academically mature, which really made them an interesting group to work with and gave us a lot of energy. And it almost felt like the league wasn't really acknowledging that or understanding that. That was a difference. That was a fundamental difference than what we saw in what I like to call the MNBA, the men's NBA, because it's weird that we have the NBA and the WNBA. And so we identified a target. We looked for a design target, and we felt that young people that had diversity and political progressiveness at the top of the priority was our target, and that they existed in many places. In every market that the WNBA cares about, you had this group of people that were highly influential, cared about otherness, and if you put the WNBA in front of them in the right way, they would get energized. And we went out, we talked to these people. We did these really intimate ethnographies and one-on-ones in all the cities that we cared about. We talked to community organizers. We talked to, women particularly women that we thought could really embody what we wanted the WNBA to be. And it was, what we learned was incredible. They were like, they loved Serena. The story of Serena was incredibly empowering to them. The idea of women's sports being this sort of symbol for the rights of women in general really energized them. But then you'd ask them, what do you know about the WNBA? And they were embarrassed. They were like, oh no, I actually never even thought about that. And then we learned that's an interesting opportunity. How can we connect them to this greater cause? And we came up with using these insights, we came up with a number of business models. Okay, so I'm not even talking about advertising, I'm not talking about brand, okay? We came up with a number of business models to help them bring the story of the WNBA to life. One thing was, we came up with a tour concept, the way like the Harlem Globetrotters go around and they tour, and we looked at that business from a commercial point of view and looked at how much money that would generate. And that was an interesting idea. We looked at one team, which was like a very controversial idea. Can you bring the men's teams and the women's teams together? In New York, we have the Knicks and the Liberty, but should there be one team, like a men's version and a women's version? This exists in the Premier League. Manchester City has a women's team and a men's team. And we thought that would be interesting, very controversial sort of thing. And then in the middle, we felt like there was a reset that needed to happen with the brand. There was like a whole brand strategy. Like it just needs to be cool. Like people need to relate to what the WNBA did. And so this is how we presented some of these ideas. And we threw in a lot here. So this is the example of some of the things we showed with the tour concept. We were like, you could travel. This is how your design language might be. We looked at the financials over time. We showed what the revenue might be over a certain amount of years. We looked at the assets that you might want to bring to bear, but the experience. We did a real sort of snapshot for a business case. Call it a business case for these ideas. And we presented this to Adam Silver and the NBA. And they chose this idea of like reasserting the brand. Let's reset the brand. And Adam famously said, we just need to be cool. And he cared a lot about the WNBA and the team, the entire organization, and the people that have been working on the WNBA for years cared a lot. And it was a little close to home for me because I worked on the launch of the WNBA in the late 90s. It was a client of mine. And so over the last 25 years, I really felt like the WNBA had become sort of a pathetic imitation of the men's league. Same uniforms, same rules, they're shot the same way. When these are dynamic athletes that have a different life. And I really felt like there was an opportunity in women's sports. An opportunity, by the way, that the US Olympic soccer team nailed last year. That they nailed. And I'm glad that we saw this a little early. Anyway, so the reset. And we came up with a strategy, a brand strategy, and this was sort of a mantra for us. The WNBA makes space, this idea of tolerance. Making space for who you are, no matter who you are, on the court, off the court. Making space just had a lot of double meaning, triple meaning. And we use it as a mantra to help bring the brand to life. We took it to design. This is the old logo. And it drove me crazy. This logo drove me crazy because if you look at this player, she looks nothing like the players I had met, and I was hanging out with. She's a little stocky. Looks like she's wearing a skirt. What type of ballers looks like they're wearing a skirt? Her hair is a little straight too. Like that's not reflective of the diversity of the audience. If you really tolerated who the players were, largely women of color, a lot of them were queer, incredible athletes, tall, diesel, how would you show up? And so we redesigned the entire logo and we literally made space. We blew up the logo. We literally expanded the logo, trying to assert a boldness. We changed the archetype, the silhouette. And one thing we heard, and I remember hearing this when we interviewed the players, they would talk about the bun. They were like, let me tell you, when I put my hair in a bun, it means I'm out there to play. And it really struck me, and I was like, wow, that was a key decision. We were like, let's put her hair in a bun. And we also elongated her body, because the players have gotten much taller. We made her ripped, if you look at her arms. We also look at her hands and her face. She's looking up. She's hopeful. It's about the future. It's about potential. It looks like she could be dunking, which is incredible. If you know about basketball, there's, the dunk is a powerful symbol. And a lot of people are like, women can't dunk, but of course they're dunking like crazy. And so we love this. We didn't know if are you looking at her from the front? Are you looking at her from behind? There was just a lot of questions there. And a lot of work went into this. Cole, Katie, and many other people at the office brought this to life. And we are pumped that that's actually what they actually did. And actually, I wasn't going to show this because it's a little morbid. But if you look at the picture of Kobe and his daughter, there's a picture that was on the cover of all the magazines of Kobe and his daughter. He's wearing a WNBA sweater. It's actually, this silhouette is on that sweater. It was sort of how he exerted his support of women's basketball at the time. Anyway, so we brought this to life in a lot. We showed the brand how they can come to life in a lot of cool ways. This is how it can work digitally. We made this video.
This game is our everything. Our voice, our movement. This game is where we hold court, where we hold high our crossover queens, our forever champions. We shoot, we soar. This game is for the future, for the culture, for the change makers. We don't just play this game. We celebrate it. The way our minds, our bodies, our passions are meant to. Unapologetically, undeniably, us.
So I show this to you because we did a ton of strategy work, tons, right? Like, we did tons of strategy before this. We spoke to players, we did all sorts of research, and that was the bulk of our project. That was most of what we got paid for. And at the very end, we were like, oh, we kind of want to be part of this coming to life. So we were like, can we do a spot? So we made this spot. And what I'm proud to say with this is every person that touched it was the audience that we were targeting, was the design target. So the director, the stylist, the cinematographer were women of color often, queer women. We really felt like this needed to have some integrity to be real. And one of the sad things was, like, it's not easy to find that sort of talent in New York. And it was just a great moment to really rally around a common cause. And anyway, we launched it. And we also recommended, this stuff didn't happen, this is a spec. But it gives you a sense of some of the stuff we were trying to push for. We were like, can this be a fashion brand? Can the WNBA be a fashion brand? That would be dope. And we also kept the league honest. Every step of the way, we were the voice of the players. And we advocated for the players every way we could. And even I had a one-on-one relationship with the Players Association. And they would ask me to speak. I didn't mediate the CBA agreement, but we were there. We were informing that point of view in the league. And they ended up hiring Kathy Engelbert, who was the CEO of Deloitte, actually. She's a big corporate player. And she was a basketball fan and player. And she came and led that CBA agreement where they changed their entire relationship with the players. Now the players get paid something legit. They have ownership, they have privileges and opportunities, they're getting job opportunities, they're doing internships with NBA sponsors over the summer, they're going to Nike, learning how to be entrepreneurs. The whole fabric of what the WNBA changed, and I believe our project was the beginning of that. And that's what the work we try to do. You know, take our point of view, take who we are, create new opportunities, new product opportunities, new business opportunities, new brand opportunities, and bring it to life and have some sort of cultural resonance. That's what we try to do. Easier said than done. Okay, that is not easy. That's not easy work, but we care. We care. You know, when you respect the other, it's sort of become, or when you pay attention to the other, it's sort of become this trite pop cultural thing. You know, like fish out of water, I talked about that before. You know, we look at it and we laugh. You know, it's a kind of an interesting phenomenon. It's all about the hardships of being on the outside, but it really legitimately is hard. There's all sorts of science that proves, from a primal point of view, if you're around people that don't look like you or necessarily respond to who you are, you actually have biological responses to it. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, you get anxious. It's hard to kind of nurture these environments where you activate otherness in yourself and in other people. And so many of us mask our otherness in the mainstream. This stat disturbs me. 61% of the workforce masks aspects of their identity at work. It's so sad. You know, it's easy for me to say, you know, my name's on the name of this company, and it's easy for me to be myself. I can kind of be myself. But to think that there might be people that I'm working with that feel like they have to sort of mute their real identity is disturbing to me. So, you know, that's something that we work to change or improve. Because when you find that otherness in yourself and in other people, you actually find a sort of superpower. Really, I believe that. The pursuit should be finding the otherness within. And when you find the otherness within, and you bring it to bear, unapologetically, the power is tremendous. And there are all sorts of great examples of that. Whether you want to talk about an old school example like Mr. Rogers, who was unapologetically embracing the notion of unique identities or mental health or empathy at a time when you didn't have that on TV. That's what made him unique and different. Or even Cardi B. You know, I'm from the hood. I speak how I speak. I am how I am. I do not choose to be famous. People choose me. Unapologetically finding the voice of the other, and then in turn it being celebrated and rewarded in the mass mainstream. That's a bit of what I'm talking about. You know, what is your other? What is your other? You know, for me, you might say my other is that I'm a black man. You might say that, you know, I'm a dad. I have 3 kids. You know, you might say tons of other things, but what you might not say are some of the things that are less obvious. You know, things like, I don't know, I'm an avid chess player. I'm obsessed with chess. I play chess all the time. Things like I've traveled, or I speak a couple of languages. Like maybe that's something interesting. And I don't mean to brag, but we all have these stories. We all have these stories. You know, whether your family comes from the military, That gives you an incredible perspective on discipline, on nationhood, on loyalty, on community. That is something that is a sort of other, whether it means you grew up in nature. You know, I can't relate to that. You know, I grew up in the hood. I grew up in Queens. You know, if you grew up in nature and you have a relationship with animals and the you know, trees and grass, like that's an otherness that I crave to have around me in my work. So my challenge to you is to find your other. My challenge to you is to find your other. Find your banana. What's your banana? My name is Alain. I'm the founder and CEO of Sylvain Labs. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and thanks for your time.